There comes a point in one's martial arts training at which one is expected to begin teaching. For me, this came after I had my second degree in Taekwondo, as I was getting ready to test for my second degree in Hapkido. I began teaching the adult classes late in the evening. I don't teach kids because I don't like children. I don't like children. They're short, and they don't know anything, and their focus is almost never entirely on me. Parenthetically, let me say this. I recently finally had to say to my mother that my wife and I will not be having kids because I do not like children. And without missing a beat, my mother said, "Oh, you get that from me?" So I was teaching the adult class late at night, and there were two young men who were hanging out at the studio. They were watching through the window in the front. They would go out and smoke, and then they would come in and they would sit and they would watch class. And when I had my students ki-op, the ki-op, in Japanese it's the ki-ai, it's the yell that everyone associates with the martial arts. And it's a spirit-raising thing, and it changes the breath, and it changes the personal dynamic and the interpersonal. There's a lot in that yell that I'm not going to explain now because you're not my students. But when I would have my students key up, these kids would go hi-ya at each other and hit each other with the sides of their hands. And about halfway through class, Matt out of his office into the studio, I'd said, "Dhiren, you come talk to me." And that made me nervous because he almost never interrupts class. I was afraid I had been teaching something wrong. I put a high belt in charge of the other students. I went into his office. And Master Lim said, "Dhiren, those two boys watching to your class?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "After class, you wait till all students go home. Then outside, those two boys pick fight to you. You say to them, 'Okay.'" And I said, "Sir, are you telling me you want me to pick a fight with those boys?" He said, "No, my black belts never pick to fight. No. They pick fight to you. You say to them, 'Okay.'" I did not want to have a fight with two 20-somethings. I was into my 40s, and they were younger and probably had better stamina, and they were more testosterone-y. New from Chef Boyardee. I didn't want to, you don't test your skills that often. I didn't want to find out with the two, but I knew what was expected of me because I was a martial artist, and I said, "Yes, sir." And he could see the trepidation in my eyes, so to be reassuring, he said, "Don't worry, Dylan. I all the time am listening," which was less reassuring than he imagined. I went back out, I finished teaching class, and I suspect I was a little bit more authoritative, a little bit louder, a little bit more demanding of my students, using them for demonstrations, throwing them around a little more, just to do anything I could. I was trying to be bigger than I actually am, to intimidate these. It's just a trick I learned from a cat. Oh, that's absolutely true. I learned that from Jojo Precious Tiger Kitty, the cat who could tell time. My wife and I used to live in an apartment in Studio City that had a courtyard, and Jojo Precious Tiger Kitty, the cat who could tell time, used to have free reign of the courtyard. He would wander around and he would relieve himself in the neighbors' flower beds and stuff. And then one day someone was moving in and they propped the door open, and Joe got out into the world beyond the front door where there are other cats that hunt for food, not for sport, and protect their territory. And by the time we found him, he'd gotten into a fight, and his lip was cut, and he was all freaked out, and his hair was all standing out. And my wife works for a living because she has to support me. So she said, "Tomorrow, would you take the cat into the holistic vet?" My wife has a holistic vet for all of our animals. I wouldn't do that. I'm homeophobic. I'm deathly afraid of herbal remedies. But I made an appointment with the holistic vet, and the next day I was supposed to take the cat in, and I grabbed him out, and he scratched me, and he bit me, and I dropped him and chased him down, and grabbed him, and he bit me, and I dropped him, and I chased him around apartment for an hour and a half, weeping and crying and apologizing, and finally I stuffed him into this stupid carrying case. I closed the guy, put him in the car, and we drove to the vet with him complaining loudly at me and me weeping and apologizing, and I took him to the vet, and the vet took him out very easily and gave him acupuncture and gave me some goop to put on his lip, and I was supposed to do that, and I brought him home, and I put the goop on his lip, and after like a week, he was still all freaked out. He wouldn't come out of the closet, he wasn't eating, he was just, something was wrong, and my wife said, you gotta take him back tomorrow, and the next day I called the vet, and I said, I gotta bring Joe in again, and he said, okay, bring him down. I said, I don't want to fight with my cat. And he said, wait, what? And I told him the story about the arguing and the yelling and the biting and the scratching, and he laughed the laugh of a man who hears the obvious solution to a simple problem, and he said, okay, you may not need to bring the cat in. You got to pull Joe out of the closet, pin him on his back for 5 minutes. And I said, what is that going to do? And he said, look, your cat went out into the world and got his ass kicked by a cat. Every day he sees you and your wife go out into the world. Then he came in and he kicked your ass. He thinks he has to lead the pride now. He thinks he's the alpha male. He doesn't know how to work the can opener. He's freaked out. You need to let him know that you are stronger than he is, that you can run the family, that everything's going to be okay. Call me back, let me know how it goes. And I pulled Joe out of the closet, and I said, I'm so sorry, buddy, I got to do this. And I put him down on his back, and I held him there, and he clawed me with all 4 paws, with the claws fully extended, and he bit my finger for like 12 seconds. And then he went completely limp under my hand. And then he started to purr. And I scratched his chin with my finger, and he started to drool. And after 2 minutes, I let him go, and he stood up, and he rubbed against me a couple of times, and then waved his tail back and forth like a dying windshield wiper, and went off to the kitchen and ate all the food we had left out for him. And I called the vet and told him he was a genius. He mocked me mercilessly. But that's not the story about Joe that I was going to tell you. I once saw Joe keep a 180-pound Rottweiler from coming in through the sliding glass door because he did not want the dog in the house. He stood up on the tips of his toes, and he puffed up and spread his hair out and looked huge. And that was enough to convince the dog. So that was the technique I was using as I was teaching the class. And these 2 kids were standing on the side, and they were watching class, and the class ended, and my students bowed to me, and we bowed to the flags, and I sent them away. And as they cleared out, I stalled around, I swept the floor, and I emptied the trash, and cleaned the mirrors, straightened up all the kicking paddles, and ran out of stuff to do, and said, Master Lim, I'm going now. So he was going to be listening. And I went out, and the 2 boys took up a position between me and the parking lot. And they sort of fanned out across the sidewalk. And one of them said, so, hey. And I said, hi. And he said, so you're a master? So I said, no, I'm just a black belt instructor. He said, oh, yeah. So you've been doing it a while, huh? I said, yeah, a while. How long you been doing it? I hate how long you've been doing it. Because at that point, I'd been studying for 8 or 9 years. And there are some people who have heard that you can't get a black belt until you've been studying for at least 10 or 15 years. And to those people, you say, I was studying 8 or 9, and they go, oh, so it's fake and stupid, and you're not real. And then I know people who have been studying for 50 and 60 years, who are in their 70s and have been studying since they were children. And some people go, ooh, really, 8 years? And then I feel like an idiot, because I've only been studying 8 years. And what are you oohing about? So I just said, yeah, it's a while. I don't know exactly. Let that hang in the air between us. And there was a lot of posturing and testing, but there was no actual challenge. And I didn't know what to do. And Master Lim stuck his head out of the studio and said, Dylan, you don't pick a fight to these boys, do you? And I said, no, sir. And he said, good. I don't want my black belts to picking fight. And one of the boys took up a position of authority and stepped forward and said, oh, your master doesn't want you fighting? At which point my master said, oh, I think maybe they want to fight to you. And the kid said, yeah, well, we'll fight them. And I knew what I was supposed to do, so I said, okay. Master Lim stepped past me toward the boys, and he said, okay, they want to fight to you, I help to you. And he stepped in front of me and stepped into his fighting stance. My master's fighting stance is the most terrifying thing in the world. I have sparred against my master. I've been kicked in the head by my master. It is not getting kicked in the head that scares me. It's the stance. My master's fighting stance is the stance of a janitor who's about to sweep a floor. It is the stance of a postal worker who is about to sort mail. It is the stance of a man who does what he does very well and intends to do it very quickly. And the demeanor of the boys changed just a little bit, and my master said, before we fight to you, who is your master? And the lead kid said, what? And he said, who teaches you Taekwondo, sends you to test my black belts? And the kid said, we don't study Taekwondo. And he said, so karate? Kung Fu? A little boxing? And the kid said, no, we just wanted to, we got street skills, man. And Master Lim laughed and turned his back on them and walked past me saying, you don't need my help, Dylan. And then very quietly, into my ear as he walked past, he said, only to key up loud. And I said, yes, sir. So I dropped into my fighting stance, which I think is stupid and goofy and makes me look like an idiot, but I key upped as loud as I could. But! And I swear to you, ladies and gentlemen, the kid in front put up his hands as though I had a gun. He said, hey, we were kidding around, man. We don't need to fight. And Master Lim said, Dylan, I think maybe now they don't want to fight to you. And I said, yes, sir. And I dropped out of my fighting stance. And the kid said, how much does it cost to study here? And Master Lim said, you don't want to study here. My students work very hard, much discipline. You go down the street, big studio, you like. No discipline, very easy. And the kid said, but how much? $140, first 2 months, only come 1 o'clock every day, clean my mirrors. The kid said, $140 to clean your studio? And Master Lim said, you go down the street, you like. Very easy. And he signaled me to come inside, and the boys backed up 10 or 12 steps before they turned their backs on us and walked off down the street, punching each other and making jokes at each other's expense. And my master took me into the studio, and he said, tonight you learn martial art. This important. This Hapkido. Never no need to fight, only to win. They come here, they don't know. I want to be who I am, I don't know. I want respect, I want strong. They see all the instructors give to me respect. They can't help, they give to me respect. They want to test to you, find out who they are. Then they see, I give you to respect. They can't help, now they give to you respect. They show up, maybe they can fight to you, maybe they can. You win, they win, nobody know. Now, they can't win. Everybody know. They walk away. This is martial art. This is natural. This is animal. And I said, sir, have you ever owned a cat? And Master Lim said, I don't like cat. I have cat one time. Never show me no respect. Move into my house, say I live here now. Make rule, no feet outside blanket. Very strict, my cat. Then one day my cat get to very sick, and then he later to dying, and I am so sad. Oh, my cat, I don't have to cat now. Oh, feet outside blanket. 2 weeks I can't do eating, no training, only sad. I don't like cat. I said, yes, sir. He made me take off my shoes. He took me out on the mat. It was the first time in years I had had his undivided attention, and for an hour and a half alone in the studio, he threw me around like a rag doll. And it was incredibly reassuring. Because frankly, there had been something a little bit nauseating in the thought of my master crying over a cat. I thank you for that, but I'm running short on time, so I don't have time to waste on laughter and applause.